What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I'm your host, TJ Zwarich. And not only are we switching things up, going outside of our usual realm of fantasy and sci-fi and comic book content, we're talking some Gladiator, we're talking some Wicked, going over our Glicked weekends. But there's also no Damon this week, and we're going back in time, pulling some old co-hosts back from the well, and I'm excited for this one. First up, we got Ryan Cortero, former co-host of the Agents of Fandom Ticket to Reality podcast. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing good. I'm ready for the Glicked. I got like a pink emblem here, got a green shirt. I'm ready. I mean, I've watched both, but I'm ready to talk about him.
You can find Ryan's wonderful Gladiator 2 review up on agentsoffandom.com as well. And he's back, ladies and gentlemen, former co-host of the Agents of Fandom pod. You can find his articles up on agentsofandom.com as well as Collider. Adamus Blevins, ready to talk some Gladiator 2. Adam Blevins, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing so good. Just hearing you say that, it just feels right. It feels like a warm hug, like a trip back home for Thanksgiving. It just everything about that just felt so right. It's so good to be back. I've missed being on the show, but missed talking to the two of you, missed your faces, and I'm just so excited to talk. I'm obviously going to cede into the background and let you two fine gentlemen discuss Wicked, because I have not seen that yet. I am planning on going to see it when I get the chance, but I'm super excited to talk about Gladiator 2. It's been a little while since I've seen it. I think my opinions have kind of shifted a little bit since I first walked out of the theater, but I'm super excited to talk about it, and just even more excited, like I said, to be here with the two of you.
And for those of us watching on YouTube, make sure you're smashing that like button. Help us battle the YouTube algorithm, build this community. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys, we got another special guest today. This is Natasha. She is 8 months. She has not seen Gladiator 2. She has not seen Wicked, but she is going to hang out so that my wife Ava can get a little bit of extra sleep this morning. And so hopefully she cooperates. If she doesn't, I might have to run away and wake Ava up and give her to her. But we'll see. She's excited to make her podcast debut today. Before we get into the two shows, this is fun because we've all been so busy. We don't get to chat as much as we used to in the past. And I actually am genuinely curious, Whatcha Watchin? What have you guys been reading, playing, watching lately in your own free time? Ryan, I'll throw it to you first.
Man, ever since you introduced this segment and I've tuned in every episode, I'm like, oh man, I'm curious, like, what would I talk about when I come on? And besides the stuff that I do for Collider, like I cover like shows like NCIS, 911, Grey's Anatomy, all that stuff. Outside of those work things, now it's done, but I've watched Arcane, League of Legends. That is such a great animated series that even if you're not into like the League of Legends games, like I'm not, but the animation style and the story is just so beautiful. It's really heartfelt stuff, and I'm sad that it only got 2 seasons because it's such a big world. But I can't recommend the show enough. It's probably one of the best, like visually stunning animated series I've ever watched. And I don't know, I just can't sing his praises enough. It's a great voice cast too. You have Ella Purnell, who was in Fallout this year. Haley Steinfeld, which we all know like from the MCU and everything like that. So I can't sing his praises enough. I think like if you're looking to just dive into like a fantasy sci-fi world, even if you're again not familiar with the League of Legends stuff, I think it's such a good series to dive into.
I'm happy that you brought that up because Damon hadn't seen Wicked or Gladiator 2 yet, and so that's why he hasn't joined us. He's dealing with a cold. He didn't want to go to the theater with a cold. And so he was tempted to just come on for the Whatcha Watchin portion to tell everybody to watch Arcane. And so I'm really happy that you were able to bring that for us. Adam, how about you? You've been playing any video games lately? What you been watching?
So I definitely the video game, I've been playing a little bit when I have time, a little bit of Black Ops 6. I'm not generally a big Call of Duty person, but what I do love, and I have for my entire life, I'm a big zombies person. Zombies has always been my jam. And for the last few years, Call of Duty has been doing us in the zombies community so dirty by providing us just with the worst content at launch, giving us nothing throughout the year, all we wanted for years in the zombies community. And I feel confident to speak for the entire zombies community when I say this. It's just round-based zombies with good maps. That's like all we've wanted. And they're like, no, how about you try Warzone with zombies? And we're like, no, we don't want that. Let's stop giving us that. And this year they finally just went back to their roots. They gave us 2 round-based zombie maps, each with Easter eggs. It's been incredible. I haven't really had time to play. I usually get 1 or 2 games in a week, but I've had so much fun with that. And then, on the movies and TV front, I think we're all kind of entrenched enough in this world, especially with between our work and our hobbies, that it's hard to really just enjoy anything without working on it from some angle in some capacity, whether you're tweeting about it, talking about it on a podcast, or because like even for me, the 2 shows that I'm watching right now that I would say I'm enjoying the most are Dune Prophecy and Landman. The first of which obviously being the Dune prequel series on HBO Max. It's set like 10,000 years, I think, before the movies. And the second is Landman, a Paramount Plus original from Taylor Sheridan, the same guy who created Yellowstone and all that. 2 really, really good shows, but then it's like in some way, I've either, whether it's the Rotten Tomatoes score, streaming information, all that kind of stuff, like viewership, I've written about them in some capacity, but I still feel like I'm enjoying them more than I'm working on them. Two very good shows. Dune Prophecy, I think, has got a lot of room to improve. As much as I am enjoying it, I think that's mostly because I'm comparing it so much to the 2 movies, which I adore and I love. Have become 2 of my favorite movies that I've ever seen. And Landman is just, I don't know if either of you are familiar with it, but it's about like the kind of oil industry, like the oil mining industry in West Texas. It's got Billy Bob Thornton, a little bit of John Hamm in there too. That was kind of what drew me to the show. I'm a huge fan of John Hamm, and then there's like probably 5 to 6 minutes of him in the first 3 episodes, which is a little disappointing. I was hoping for a little more John Hamm, but overall, that's been an entertaining show. I think 3 episodes into that out of 10. So yeah, but that's been most of what's going on. I guess I will say just briefly on movies too. I enjoyed Red One, I think, way more than I expect. I think it's still playing in theaters right now, more than I expected. I try to go into things with an open mind. Generally, I expected that movie to be terrible. I will just honestly say I expected. The trailers looked awful. I'd heard awful things, and I really enjoyed that movie. Especially if you like Chris Evans, if you like Christmas movies, if you're willing to go in and give it a chance, I promise Red One is worth the trip to the theater. If you go in expecting an Oscar-winning movie, you're going to be really disappointed. And there's a lot of flaws in it, but it really is. It's a lot of fun. It's a great movie. And I won't say it's a great movie. It's a really fun movie, especially if you like Christmas movies. So yeah, that's in between Black Ops 6 and especially Landman and Dune Prophecy are probably the 3 of what's occupying most of my time on a more casual basis right now.
One that I just finished a big binge on was Cobra Kai, another show that you can find Ryan's articles, his reviews and recaps up at agentsoffandom.com. That show's been out for a while, and I'm noticing they're still right at the top of our kind of like For You style page on Agents of Fandom alongside your Moana review, your Moana 2 review. So check out agentsofandom.com right now, and you can find a whole lot of wonderful pieces from our own Ryan Cortero. Cobra Kai was a lot of fun, and Ryan, I will go spoiler free for Cobra Kai, but we were texting, and the way they concluded this portion of the season was like mind blowing. It's a very emotional season, and I have no idea how they're going to end this. I have absolutely no idea how they're going to end this show because it was wild the way that it kind of this last part came to a conclusion. I started this show on. I don't know what it is, where it is on the States, but it was on Prime for us in Canada. And like Natasha and I were hanging out last night. She didn't want to leave my arms. She required a lot of attention. So I didn't want to watch something that required a lot of focus. And so I put on Papa's House. It's the new show with Damon Wayans and Damon Wayans Jr. And for like the pilot episode was like a little cringy. Kind of seemed like very, very 90s, but fun and comforting. And I ended up watching, I think, all 5 or 6 episodes that are out right now. and it got better with each episode, and it was a lot of fun. Kind of just felt like a classic early 2000s comedy that you'd watch on a day that you're homesick from school, and there's 4 episodes in a row of My Wife and Kids on one of those channels, and you're throwing that on. Like, that's kind of what it felt like, and I enjoyed it. I've been playing a lot of Dragon Age Veilguard. That's the RPG story focused game. Lots of choices, very Witcher-esque, which another courtesy Ryan's amazing jobs on socials. Adam and I saw The Witcher 4 is fully in production, and we're getting another sequel to one of our favorite games of all time. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But Dragon Age Veilguard reminds me a lot of The Witcher. I'm having a lot of fun playing it so far. That's been occupying a lot of my time. Like, there's been a couple nights this week where I'll be like, yeah, I'll play for a half hour or something before bed, and it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then I realize it's 2 a.m. and I'm like, damn it. But it's been a lot of fun, and so I don't have too many complaints there. And then, of course, I was recently in theater seeing Wicked and Gladiator. So it's time to dive into our Glicked podcast segment. But before we do,
Natasha has something she would like to say.
She's got her thoughts out. So I have some things I want to get out, but we'll if she's gonna be loud, why don't we go? Ryan, give me your initial thoughts, spoiler free, just for now, on Wicked in theaters right now.
Yeah, so I knew, obviously, like, Wicked being a musical, one of the highly regarded musicals, like, of all time in live theaters, and I knew the gist of, like, what the story would be. Like, it's a prequel to Wizard of Oz. It's showing that the Wicked Witch of the West isn't as villainous as she seemed in the original story. So going into that, I'm like, okay, that's kind of the premise of this. It's directed by John M. Chu, who has, like, a vastly wide range of content. Like, obviously, he's known for this, In the Heights, which is like a Lin-Manuel Miranda Broadway musical. He also did Crazy Rich Asians, which is, like, such a phenomenal film.
It's one of my favorites of all time, I think. That's my favorite rom-com of all time.
Yeah, it's amazing. And again, it's nice to see that much representation on screen. So I really appreciate that. But then he also did G.I. Joe Retaliation, the one with Channing Tatum, which is, like, again, wildest thing ever. But so going into that, I was like, okay, wow, like, this is going to be like a grander scope thing. They made this like a 2-part movie where even the first movie is just the entire runtime of the stage musical, which is crazy to think, like, how much they expanded on this. And going into it, like, the music was honestly my favorite part of the movie. Like, the music is just so fun. It's so upbeat. Like, I know there's a whole controversy going on, like, whether people should be singing along in theaters. Whoever you ask, like, they have a different opinion.
Don't sing along in the theaters.
Exactly. Don't. Even though Cynthia Erivo, the star of Wicked, is telling you to, you're better off hearing her voice, because her voice is just so stellar. Her and Ariana Grande's is just amazing to hear. It's just mesmerizing, and their acting is just so on point. Like, I have nothing to base it off of, but the way they embody the characters is just so well done. Like, you really feel like you already know what type of people they are just by their little mannerisms, just by, like, the little jabs that they throw at each other. And it's just so nice to kind of see their dynamic work with one another. And I just can't, like, get over how just, like, even with its, like, 2.5-hour runtime, it doesn't feel that long. And I know we'll get into that with Gladiator as well. It's the same runtime as well, but, like, the pacing just moves so fast with Wicked. And, like, by the time it ends, I'm like, damn, I have to wait a whole year for the second part. It feels like Avengers Infinity War, where you're left on that cliffhanger and you're like, damn, I have to wait another year for this. And it's just such an amazing experience. Like, if you can go see it in theaters, like, please do, because, like, it's just so stunning to watch on the big screen, and just having the songs pump through their sound system is just amazing. I'm going to go see it again tonight, and I'm pretty sure if I can, I'll plan to go for the sing along version where you can actually sing, when it comes out in theaters next month. But it's probably my favorite musical of all time. I think like I can say that without hesitation. It's just so great to like immerse yourself in the land of Oz and kind of witness like this very heartfelt and like very real to life story about feeling like an outsider and feeling like oppressed and like trying to get out of that bubble and try to show like you're more than just who you look like. You have something of value to offer. And so, I mean, I just can't recommend that movie enough.
I couldn't agree more. I unfortunately had a pretty bad viewing experience where it was good at the start. Outside of one person on their phone taking a picture of the title card, it was very good at the beginning. And then here I am all freaking week, holding as much space as I physically can to feel the power of the lyrics in Defying Gravity. And I'm still stuck holding that space because our sound went out with 20 minutes left in the movie and we did not get to finish the movie. We were waiting for about 40 minutes for them to try and figure it out and get it back on. They couldn't do it. You could tell by the end, they were kind of purposely trying to just like not have it fixed so that we would leave, because I went to a 3:30 or whatever it was showing and there was like 8 people there and they had a sold out one coming at like 7 o'clock after that. So they wanted us to get the hell out so that they didn't have to refund people for their for the bigger showing. But it was tough. I didn't get Defying Gravity, but I did really love to get to see Wicked. It was so beautifully performed. Before we talk about the cast, I did want to say, make sure you're smashing that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming content, because we got a lot of really exciting stuff planned for December. We got our live shows coming back. We're going to be covering Skeleton Crew, covering Creature Commandos, What If, Season 3, as well as Sonic 3 is coming out, adaptation of one of my favorite video games of all time. Ryan, who stood out for you in the cast of Wicked? Like, Ariana was incredible. Cynthia Erivo was incredible. I was stunned by how amazing her voice was. I hadn't heard her sing before this. He was so good. And then Jonathan Bailey really stole the show for me.
Man, Jonathan, I'm a straight man. I know what I like, what I don't like. But Jonathan Bailey, the man that you are, is insane. When he performs his grand song, the sounds that came out of the people I was with and myself was indescribable. I love him on Bridgerton. He is so great there. He's just, yeah. I can't even get words out because of just remembering his moments in Bridgerton and in Wicked. He is just so good at what he does. I can't get over like some of the dance choreography that I think he does do. I didn't know he could sing before this movie at all. So then when he was singing, I was like, oh, this is like something that they should be like taking advantage of in Bridgerton, because if Anthony Bridgerton gets us like musical moment in that show
with the violin backgrounds.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that would be incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So he is really, really great in this. Michelle Yeoh, like, I mean, Michelle Yeoh was great in everything she does. She
Queen.
Yes, exactly. And she plays such an interesting type of character in Wicked, Madame Morrible, where she's like kind of the mentor to Cynthia Erivo's Elphaba. And again, I'm not gonna go into spoilers whether you've seen the musical or not, but like I really love how in every role that she does, she kind of has this like there's a bit of a regalness to her, but also human in a sense, and like down to earth kind of vibe. Like she makes you feel comfortable, and I like how she portrays that in this movie. Jeff Goldblum, unlike or not as a dig at Joe Goldblum, but he plays the same kind of personality in every type of his
I didn't get to see Jeff because that's like right before when our stuff cut out. But tell me, is Jeff Goldblum essentially playing the Grand Master as the Wizard of Oz?
You know what? Yes, that I didn't think about it when I was watching it, but yes, he is pretty much exactly that. But honestly, yeah, no, it's pretty much that, and I can't get over like how that similarity now, because like in obviously in Wicked he plays the Wizard of Oz, so he kind of needs that grand performance. He needs to like prove himself, like he's just such a godly like figure, and you know that's kind of who the Grandmaster is in those movies. So yeah, he's pretty much the same. He's fun. He's very Jeff Goldblum like, if you ever seen any of his roles. So yeah, I really enjoy this cast. I wish there was like an ensemble award that this could get, because they're also great. They all bounce off well with each other. But I really believe that like Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande like deserve at least award nominations for their performances here, because there's a moment in the movie where it's just silent and it's just the two of them playing off each other. With again, it's silent, but you just watch the way they move together, and it's so hard to talk about without spoiling it. But like, it's so heartfelt without any words, just their movements, their actions. It's just so heartfelt and touching. And I can't like get over like that's the tone that this film sets, and to be able to do that with just your facial expressions, with just carrying that emotional weight, is just so powerful. So I mean, I hope they get nominated. I don't know if they'll win. It's been such a tough race this year, like looking at all the types of movies that we've gotten. But it's I gotta say, like Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo like deserve their flowers greatly for this movie.
Couldn't agree more. They really do. And going back to the Jonathan Bailey thing, one of the most common things in reviews of Wicked that I've seen is like, damn, this man has chemistry with everyone. And I think it's true because he's probably the most charming human being on the planet right now. But it's so funny because one of my favorite fun facts about this movie was that his horse in Wicked is his horse from Bridgerton. And they brought the horse from Bridgerton back because he had such good chemistry with the horse. And so, like, this man truly does have chemistry with absolutely everyone. Before we switch over to Gladiator 2, I did have a very similar background to Wicked as you did. Like, I knew it was set in the land of Oz. I knew it was started out as a prequel that ends at the same time when we get through Wicked Part 2 as the Wizard of Oz. But I didn't know a few intricacies, and so one minor spoiler. But I thought it was really funny because I had so many moments like this where, you know, the little baby lion cub gets released from the cage, and I go, and years later, that lion becomes the lion without courage in the Wizard of Oz, and like kind of just like as like a joke prediction. And Ava's like, yeah, like that is the lion from Wizard of Oz. That's how it goes. I was like, oh, and then I'm watching something and I was like, oh, I bet this guy's totally gonna turn into the Scarecrow. I bet this guy's totally gonna turn into the Tin Man. And Ava's like, yes, that is the story of Wicked. Yes, and so I'm like very proud of my predictions. And she's like, good job, proud of you.
Yeah, no, I had the same feeling too. I didn't know that going into my first watch, but then after everything came out, like I was like, oh, this is a thing. So like now I'm gonna kind of pay attention more to those subtle nods to those people who do turn into the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, because from what I've seen, there are like Easter eggs with how their body language and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm interested to see how that comes into fruition, because that seems really interesting.
The tie for my favorite song. I didn't get to see Defying Gravity, but I've had Popular and What Is This Feeling, the Loathing song, stuck in my head for the last week. What is your favorite song from Wicked?
Well, Defying Gravity is just like a given, but other than that, I would say like Dancing Through Life is just so fun. That's the one I've kind of been like jamming out to, where I just like when I take a walk or just like clean around the house. Like that's kind of like such a fun song. And again, the tone of it is like it's just to have fun, to dance through life basically. And that's the one where it's like so well choreographed that I every time I listen to it, I can still take myself back to that moment where I was watching, I'm like, I'm so impressed with how they managed to do a lot of those things, a lot of the things in that scene. And so yeah, that's Defying Gravity is just amazing. And it's even crazier to think that like Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande were singing that live on set. Like that's not a recording of them doing the song. Like that's them live. And I can't wait for you to see it because like it's crazy how talented they are as singers. So yeah, I can't wait for when it inevitably gets nominated at the Oscars and that they perform that song live on stage. Like it's gonna be such a powerful moment.
It really is. Those two are so incredibly talented, and there's been so many things from the press tour that have been genuinely funny, but a lot of people are like, what is going on with these two? What has been going on set? And all I really have to say to that is, do you not know many theater kids? Because if you spend some time around theater kids when they're in the thick of an emotional production, they're dramatic. That's why they're so good at this. That's why they're so talented, because that's who they are. But go see Wicked in theaters. It truly is an incredible experience. Let's pivot to the first half of the Wicked segment, the Gladiator 2 portion. I will of course throw it to Adam first. He's been nice and quiet, unlike Nat here, so I got to mute again. General thoughts, Adam, Gladiator 2.
So coming out of the theater, I was pretty blown away. I'll say going into this, movie, my thoughts on the first one, the first Gladiator, are pretty well documented. I think it's one of the best historical action like period pieces ever made. And Russell Crowe's incredible in that movie. It obviously won him his first and only Oscar, even though I think he's been nominated a few other times. But and I believe it, if I'm not mistaken, it won Best Picture, Best Director, a few other things like that as well. And with any sequel in general, but especially a legacy sequel where it's already kind of fighting once enough time goes by for a movie like Gladiator, the first question people are going to ask is like, why? Prove to me that this is not a cash grab. Like that. Why else are we coming back to this if not for you to just try to make a bunch of money? Which, just briefly, I'll say this movie is actually not going to. It's going to be a huge loss for Paramount, despite it almost, it's like approaching 250 million at the box office, but it cost 250 million to make. It had $100 million budget or $100 million marketing budget, like on top of that. So if they did this for the money, then it was a huge failure. Which I'm sure in Paramount, in the internal Paramount discussions, was probably part of it, and I'm sure they're disappointed at how it's performing. But anyway, coming out of the movie, I was pretty blown away. Ryan, I read your review, the review that's up on agentsofandom.com. Everybody go check that out. I was blown away, maybe even more so by your review than I was by the movie. I was so fired up about it because it kind of, what you said about it in your review kind of gave me everything that I wanted, which was like the spectacle. And that while it's, it perhaps has some story weaknesses and stuff like that, that it's got really compelling characters and good performances, but it's like the spectacle of it and the action, which is kind of what you're going to see a Gladiator movie for. And I was blown away by all that stuff in the theater. I have no notes, no complaints about that. And I know we'll talk a little bit about the specifics because I do have some problems with it. But ultimately, it gave me everything that I wanted. Do I think it could have been a better movie? I think there's absolutely room for this to have been a better movie, and it is really hard to deny the comparisons to the original. But like when I first came out of this, I think I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. I think I'd probably bump that down to like an 8.5, maybe like in the 8.5 to 9 range now that I've kind of had some time to sit on it. And I'm not just so, because I will admit about myself, I am one of the worst people for kind of getting so hyped up about something and letting my emotions and excitement cloud my critical opinion of it and just being like, oh, this was the best thing I've ever seen. And then 3 days later, I'm like, well, it wasn't really the best thing I've ever seen, because maybe not. And that's kind of how I feel about this, even though I still really like it. There is more time I've had. I saw this movie when it came out, I think like a week ago. A week ago today, I saw it on Friday, the Friday that it came out. I haven't seen it since, so I've had some time to sit on it. And I do want to go see it again. But ultimately, it's like I said, just to circle back before I mess it off, it gave me what I wanted, in that I got the spectacle and the action that I was seeing it in IMAX, especially, was just a cathartic experience. Some of those battles in the arena, particularly the water scene and some of those hand-to-hand combat scenes where you really feel not just watching a scene, but I'm more in the arena watching Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal just slash swords at each other and throw each other around. It felt really visceral, which is something that I wanted. But yeah, it's a great movie. I think a great flawed movie, but ultimately you can't, no matter what you're going to see it for, you can't deny that it's a great time.
Couldn't agree more. I had an absolute blast in the theater watching this one. There were some things like the water scene where I'm looking at it and going, I had to make a conscious choice to go, okay, I could think about why there is water and sharks in the Colosseum. I could think about how they got there, if that's at all possible or feasible. Or I could just go, woo, sharks, gladiator sharks, and have a good time. Ryan, I want your overall thoughts on this one. I did also forget, I want your ranking out of 10 for Wicked. And one more piece that I just forgot to mention about Wicked that I thought was really incredible in terms of an adaptation standpoint. I thought this was an amazing adaptation, but specifically that scene you were talking about where they were dancing and having that moment without even speaking, getting to see the tears run down Elphaba's face and Cynthia Erivo's performance. That was one of the cool benefits of seeing this as a movie as opposed to the stage performance, of getting to see the intricacies of the actors' facial expressions and their emotions. Give me your ranking for Wicked out of 10, and give me your thoughts on Gladiator 2.
Honestly, to that point, that's one of the things like I really criticize like musical adaptations for is like what are you showing me? How are you utilizing the space better? Like instead of just having one still camera in one frame, like because sometimes some filmmakers like to do that where they're like, yeah, this is just you're gonna see what the stage already sees anyways, and just recreate that in film. I like utilizing that space, and that scene in particular that you mentioned, TJ, is like the one where I'm like, yeah, you can get to show us these close-ups, or the dancing through life scene where you get to have this grand like set design, set performance thing, and like really play around with like what your space and how you move the space to reflect the song. So with all that being said, I want to say I will put this like at a 9.5 out of 10. I think I just need a second viewing to really give it that bump, because when you're watching it for the first time, you're kind of just like, ooh, what's next? What's next? What's next? But I think like I just need to sit with it one more time and just like really take in like how the story flows overall, and like what subtle nods they allude to during some of the story beats. But yeah, 9.5 out of 10 for that, for Wicked. As for Gladiator, I only watched the original film like maybe a week or two before I saw Gladiator 2. So I didn't really have any like nostalgia or like hold to the original. So then when I watched Gladiator 2, I'm like, yes, this, like to Adam's point, it does feel the same as the first Gladiator, but it's like, okay, how can we make it grander? How can we, why, like, we have the technology to do certain things now. Like, what can we do with it? And there's like this one scene that's shown in the trailer where like this rhino thing, and it's just like, it is an animatronic. It's not CGI, which is really cool to see. It's how they pulled that off. But then there's also some weird choices with CGI monkeys, which is like, that's the one that took me out, other than the shark thing, because like that just felt like such
Why
a weird...
why did those monkeys have monster faces?
And why are they like weirdly proportioned and everything like that? I was like, as someone who at that time had recently rewatched Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I was like, this is just so, I cannot see a monkey like this. I need my like human-esque looking monkeys. But it was just, yeah, there is some shoddy CGI. I think I have kind of, I gave Gladiator 2 like a 9.5 on my, or a 4.5 on my Agents of Fandom review. But to Adam's point, like there are some things that when you sit with it, it's like the story just feels too similar to the first one. Some characters I really enjoyed, but I wish I could see more of. I think in the original film, like you really got to look at Joaquin Phoenix's character and like understand what kind of villain he would be. And while Joseph Quinn and Fred Herchinger are really good at what they do as the emperors, I think I needed to see a bit more of like their motivations for why they're doing what they're doing instead of just being like this villain. And even Pedro Pascal, he's really, really good in this, but similar to them, I'm like, I just need to know a little bit more about who you are and why you're kind of doing what you're doing. I think he plays a more nuanced character than how I envisioned he was going to be based on the trailers, which I really enjoyed. So watching a bit of his journey was like, okay, this is really good. But then it kind of like his journey comes to a standstill, and I'm like, oh, I was really starting to like you, and now we're moving on from here. So that kind of like, yeah, there's some characters that just don't get utilized enough. The one character though, or the one actor who gets utilized the most, and I'm was so amazed by. I mean, he's great in everything he does. Denzel Washington, my God, the man is wow. I had my mouth agape maybe 4 times during this movie, and probably 2 out of those 4 times was because of him and his performance. There are some really shocking turns in Gladiator 2 thanks to his character that I was like, wow. And that's what really like sold me on my higher score, because of Denzel Washington's performance and his character arc throughout the movie. He will play whatever game he needs to kind of get to the top, and I love that kind of motivation. It's kind of very similar to Oz in The Penguin, where he's kind of like playing with different factions and trying to work his way up. And with Denzel's character, he's a lot smarter with it and a lot more subtle with it. And I just really I love seeing his rise to power throughout the whole movie. So he's someone that I wanted to say, like, I hope he gets award nominations for, if not win. Again, tough best supporting actor race, but my God, he's very good in Gladiator 2.
He's absolutely incredible. Like, I'd say he is for sure from an acting performance, not the star from like most line reads. Obviously, the star of the film is Paul Mescal, but the star performer for sure was Denzel Washington in this one. Who else did you guys find? And I'll throw it to you first, Adam, that like really either stood out or maybe didn't give a great casting performance. One that I had a very specific feeling on was Paul Mescal's performance. And I thought that he did a perfect job of being the son of Maximus, of giving us similar mannerisms and voice inflections to Russell Crowe's character that made me think this is Maximus's son. However, I didn't think he had the same ability that Russell Crowe had to lead a blockbuster. I thought he gave a great performance of the child of Maximus. I didn't think he gave me this dude led the biggest movie of the year type energy. And I think that was kind of lacking, that Russell Crowe had that level of charisma that I don't know I got from Paul Mescal in this one. And I do think it was kind of clear, like we talked about, there were some story issues that was like, how did that go along here? I agree. I was kind of missing a little something from Pedro Pascal's character. They're just a little bit more from that arc I would have liked. But also, I don't know where exactly it comes in, but I think there was clear sort of something missing with how much of May Calamawi's stuff got cut, with obviously initial reports that she was going to be playing in a leading role. And then we don't know if this is for surely the case, but rumors are that her views on supporting Palestine through what they're going through, it led to her kind of being cut from this movie. And so I kind of felt like there was something missing, an arc of this movie missing a little bit. But who really stood out for you in the cast, Adam?
So standout, I mean, you guys, Ryan, you hit on everything perfectly with Denzel. I'm not going to go another 10 minutes. I could, but I'm not going to go another 10 minutes. He definitely deserves to be nominated. It's like you said too. It's a really really stacked race this year. There's going to be a lot of people. Like, no matter who wins, there's going to be snubs, because there's just a lot of people that have given some really, really great performances this year. But Denzel is a stick of dynamite in this movie, just like even at 70 years old, however he is. Especially that last scene, just like him standing. I mean, at his age. And like, I'm sure obviously that was like a body double. That was not actually Denzel out there in the water. But like, still, just the way they choreographed that, I was like, man, like I know Denzel is like 70 something, but I don't feel that in this scene like I would with a lot of other 70-year-old actors. And two, TJ, I think you nailed two things perfectly. I think Paul Mescal is really good in this movie, but I don't think he's there yet where Russell Crowe was for the first Gladiator. And I think Paul Mescal is going to get there. I think this will probably be a very important step in his career. I don't think he doesn't have it. I just think he doesn't have it yet. He's not quite there in this movie. He did give the movie what it needed to kind of for it to be where it's at, but he doesn't. Nobody's coming out like the front runner for best. Like it's like people. I know this is probably a strange compare, but like when people saw Oppenheimer, like everybody came out and they're like, well, "That's Cillian Murphy just won best lead." Like it's over. The race is over. Like nobody's saying that about Paul Mescal in this movie, but I do think in the future he'll give some performance inevitably that they probably will be. The biggest disappointment for me, and I'm so disappointed. I'm to even say this is like heartbreaking, but like Pedro Pascal, I am on. I love Pedro Pascal and everything that he does. I've not seen him in something that I was like, ugh. This movie would have been better, or a TV show would have been better without Pedro Pascal. I wasn't compelled by his character at all, but even I think his performance was really hindered by the script, in that his character is so like, I don't know if one-dimensional is the right word, but he's from like very early on, he makes it obvious that he's not on the same side as like these emperors. Like we see him invade Mescal's home early on, Lucius's home early on, and we're like, so we're kind of made to dislike this guy from the beginning. But then immediately he then goes and talks to the emperors, and I'm like, okay, well, this guy's not a bad guy. And then it's just, he's kind of just bland the rest of the way. There's not like, he's very, again, I don't think it's his fault, because he's not delivering something where I'm like, wow, he's really like, he's just like, well, I don't really think we should do that. And it's like, okay, you're going to do it anyway. He's like, okay, for Rome. And it's like, that's kind of it. It's like, well, that's not really what I want. I wanted a little more of like a struggle with him, I think, because it does feel like he was obviously not, I don't think he was tired of being out on the field, like doing things that he felt were unethical, but I didn't feel like we saw him struggle with that enough. He opened up a little bit about it with Lucilla, Connie Nielsen's character, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the only one to reprise her role from the first film. He opened up about it with her a little bit, but like, other than that, it's just so black and white from him. And again, I don't think it's his fault. I think he was kind of dealt a bad hand with like the script. I don't think the writing with his character at least was the best, but yeah. And then Ryan too, I agree with you as well. I just briefly, I'll say about the emperors. I've seen, there's been a lot of commentary too, back and forth about how, well, like they didn't really need to be, fleshed out anymore, because that's kind of the point of their characters, that they're just madmen. But in my opinion, it would have been, when at the end of the first Gladiator, they take like, good wins, and they take over and they're kind of headed down the right path. And I'm kind of like, wait a minute, that was like 17 years ago. What? I'm like, how did we already get back here to these guys? I'm like, I thought like 15 years ago we were moving in a good direction. Then it's like, wait, so I feel like that was almost where that was kind of the first thing that when I came out, I was thinking, I was like, something had to have gotten cut there about how we got their rise to being emperors, or who they stepped on or cut off to get here, because like obviously they should not have been there. But I'm like, who were you even? What happened there? That was kind of the biggest missing.
How did this happen in 16 years?
Yeah, it's like we were literally, it's not like this was 150 years. Like, it's not like I know it's kind of, it's not 150, but like it's similar to like The Force Awakens. We get to kind of see like throughout the new, like the sequel trilogy, we kind of get to see it now. They've even done an even better job through The Mandalorian and stuff, piecing together, like, even though the Empire fell, kind of how the First Order kind of rose up through the ashes. And I know I'm comparing, 3 movies and countless TV shows to a 2.5-hour movie, but like, I still feel like they gave us nothing when they should have given us at least a little bit on that front. But, I don't know. That was one of those things that I do think they gave good performances. So that was one of those things that and they were kind of just so, Joseph Quinn especially, I was like, you're like a fucking madman. Like every time, that one time too, where he's like, he's like screaming, but like spit is just coming like all out of his, and I'm just like, oh my god, like I'm like, get me. I know I felt like it was like a 4DX screening where I'm like, he's not actually spitting on my face, but I'm like, just get me away from you. I feel uncomfortable right now watching you do this, which that was kind of his goal, was to make the audience feel uncomfortable and feel weird about it. So I don't know. That's one of those things where the more I thought about it, the biggest thing I'll say, just to circle back, Pedro Pascal coming out of it like General Acacius, I wanted more. Like even as soon as I was watching, like I was kind of disappointed and I wanted more. But for the rest of it, for the most part, I think everybody did a really, really good job with what they were dealt, especially Denzel, who for 50 plus years has been taking the hand that he's dealt and not only making the most of it, but emphasizing it and like growing it, expanding it, helping everybody around him. Like that's another thing that I love about him too, is I think without Denzel in this film, with somebody else playing Denzel's part, I don't think Paul Mescal is as good, because I think when you're sharing a scene with Denzel, you kind of have to rise to that occasion. And if I'm not mistaken, Paul Mescal spoke about that, I believe, on the Graham Norton show. He was like, well, if I'm going to be acting beside Denzel, like I have to give it all. Like it's like if you're a basketball player, if you're going to be on the court with Michael Jordan or LeBron James, you have to bring it. Like, and that's what it's like, I would imagine, acting with Denzel. So, and he kind of, even though obviously he's not going to rise to Denzel's level. He's just not probably not ever, or he's definitely not there yet. I still think that helped him give the performance that he needed to get, even though it's not on the same level as Russell Crowe's.
I think that was very well said. And going back to the Pedro stuff that you guys talked about, I think I don't even think he necessarily brought anything innately special to the character, because I'm with you. I think the character was just sort of boring. I think if it wasn't for my innate love for Pedro Pascal, I probably wouldn't remember anything about that character. I feel like he'd just sort of be like a guy, but I want a little bit more with that. Ryan, any kind of final thoughts to go through, whether it be the action, the score? I thought it was hilarious as I was rewatching the first movie, how exact same composer, and damn, the Gladiator score sounds very similar to Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, it kind of seems like my man just took some of his top riffs from Gladiator 2 and was like, let's expand on that for Pirates of the Caribbean. But any final thoughts on the movie as a whole before we start pivoting to getting out of here?
No, I think funny enough, with Joseph Quinn's like yelling at Pedro Pascal, I'm like, this is the last time you're gonna do it, because when in Fantastic Four, Reed Richards will eat you out, like to Johnny Storm, because like that's the last time Joseph Quinn's gonna get that opportunity to have that kind of screaming match with Pedro Pascal. But yeah, no, like I think it tries to like ape off the legacy of the Gladiator movie. It tries to do that, but it plays too much to what the first Gladiator is, that like it's hard to again justify the sequel of it. That's why I'm curious if they do make a Gladiator 3, like where the story goes from there, because there again, like there is a tease of like good winning, and so I'm curious to see like what could you tell in a third Gladiator movie that would again warrant another sequel, especially so close to this one, because they're saying like we're not going to wait like 20 plus years again for Gladiator 3. So I'd love to see like with how everything falls at the end of Gladiator 2, what will come from Gladiator 3.
I thought it was so funny that they did a recast for the flashback with Paul Mescal's character.
Yeah.
How like his character is obviously in Gladiator, right? He's a small little kid, but they just totally recast the little blonde kid, and obviously he'd be older now. But instead of using the same flashbacks, they used different ones with a little kid that looked more like Paul Mescal, which I thought was really funny. Fun little fact: in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., one of the best shows of all time, the guy who plays young, oh my gosh, what is Paul Mescal's character?
Lucius.
The kid who plays young Lucius, is the son of Baron Strucker. He's Werner von Strucker in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He comes and plays a pretty big role in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And he's basically just like rich, entitled kid who knows nothing about what's going on with Hydra, but has just had a little bank account that his daddy gave him the whole time. And he plays a fun little role. But I thought it was funny that they recast the flashback sequences to get a kid that looks more like Paul Mescal in there instead of just the little blondie. Adam, any final thoughts for Gladiator 2?
No, I mean, I just think, yeah, I'm with you, Ryan, that if they're gonna, I'm so curious as to how they're gonna do Gladiator 3, because Ridley Scott said not long ago that him and Paul Mescal were both like working on the script together, and that I believe in that same article that he said something about Paul Mescal would get a writing credit on the third film, which would be pretty cool, and maybe would affect it in a different way. But I just, as much as I love both the first Gladiator and this one too, I mean, obviously the first one will live on in much higher regard in my mind, in my opinion, and I think kind of in the general public too. I don't think Gladiator 2 will be remembered in the same way that the first one was, and will carry a legacy that long. I'm just, why it is my biggest question going forward. But also, I think Paramount is probably going to be looking at this like, hey, if you're going to do this again, why don't we do it for like 100 million or 125 million instead of 350 million? Especially because it looks like this is going to be a major flop, which I know a lot of people say like, box office stuff doesn't matter. I don't know why we care about that, but like, it very much matters in terms of what we get going, like the kinds of things we get going forward, how studios choose to treat. Because like if Gladiator 2 was currently at $500, we'd already probably be hearing about Gladiator 3 right now. And they'd probably be like on Ridley Scott's 86-year-old ass about like, you better, hey, before you die, you need to get this movie made. Like, I don't care if it's the last thing you do, but you're going to get this movie made. But now it's probably like, well, let's pump the brakes. Let's see if this has, it's just too early to tell, because we've seen a lot of movies like last year. I think what was the Elemental was the perfect example of a movie that starts out really poorly but ends up grossing like $500 million because legs and good word of mouth. And Gladiator 2 so far has had really good reviews, for the most part from critics and audiences. Not quite as high as I think the first film, but we'll see where it goes. I'm just so intrigued as to what the future of this franchise could look like, because I as much as I want more Gladiator and more, especially of these action scenes, because you just so rarely get something that high quality in terms of just the action. I'm just like, we have a reason to go back, and right now I don't feel like we have a reason. If we go back, it definitely can't be a third cookie cutter, because like it is, as much as I love both the first story especially, it is very much, let's just take him on the exact same journey, put the exact same kind of characters around him who support him, and then turn on him, this kind of stuff. So I'm like, if we do that again, we can't. If we're going to especially be going back with more Lucius, I do think that bodes well, that hope we won't get the same thing, because if it's going to be the same character again, they kind of are going to have to move things in a different direction. But we'll see. I'm just so intrigued for what the future of this could look like. And also personally, as somebody who's always invested in box office stuff, very curious to see how this is going to play out, because it seems like Paramount is probably going to be netting a 9-figure loss, if not maybe 8 figures, but not a 9-figure loss on this movie, which definitely will affect the future of the franchise. You're muted, TJ.
Oh, thank you. I think I made it clear with the box office performance that it will need to be changing something up. If we're doing a third one, it can't just be like another, all right, let's get these guys in a ring and fight. The action sequences will get some people in the door, but you need active changes and development and a strong script to get it together, because I do think this was an all-star cast with some beautiful direction with a kind of weak script, if we're looking back at it, like not from a dialogue perspective, but from a fleshing out characters and giving us the full scope of the stories that we need, I think. Before we get out of here, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up in December. Like I mentioned, the return of the live show. We will be back for the first episode. It'll be on a Monday. I believe next Monday we'll be live for the Skeleton Crew debut. And then after that, it'll be every Tuesday. We will be live every Tuesday, right after Skeleton Crew. We got Creature Commandos coming. We got What If coming. We'll have shows for those. We have Sonic 3 coming in December. Adam, of Skeleton Crew, Creature Commandos, and What If, what are you most looking forward to?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. I would probably I'd probably put What If third. I mean, I'm still excited about it. I enjoyed the second season much more than the first, but I think I'm going to go with Creature Commandos at 1, just because I'm so excited to see what James Gunn is finally able to do with there's been so, I mean, he took this over like in February or something of like last year. This has been such a long time coming. He's been unhesitant to give out quotes on social media to debunk rumors. It's not like Kevin Feige where we have no idea what's been going on for a year. We know he is so transparent about everything, about the whole process, what's been greenlit, where things are at in the script. And it's just, there's been so much talk, and I'm so excited to finally see the first I know Superman is like technically the first, will be the kind of the grand opening per se, but this is like the app, like Superman will be the prime rib that gets brought to the table. But like Creature Commandos is the appetizer. Like this is what's going to be kind of influence a lot, and we're going to see a lot of characters in the show that we will also meet in Superman too. So I'm just so excited. I think that I'm going to put that 1 just because I'm so excited to finally see what James, because in my opinion, at least for the last few years, he has a pretty unspotted record or uncheckered record for comic book stuff. I think all 3 of the Guardians movies, especially the first and the third, are slam dunk home runs, like as good as they can, as good as comic book movies can kind of hope to be, pretty much. So I want this to be, I know not every single project is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy, or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, whatever, but even Peacemaker, all this kind of stuff. But I'm also just so excited for something fresh, something new with DC. I think me, like a lot of people, I'm just so tired of the DCEU and all this kind of stuff, like the Flash and Aquaman. Like, as much as like I had an okay time with Aquaman, it's fine. Like I like, big fan of Jason Momoa and stuff like that, but I was just so tired of that constant having no idea what was going on. And I feel like this is the opposite, and that Gunn has a very, very clear direction of where all this is going and kind of how this is going to set up. So I'm so excited to finally kind of get going with Creature Commandos. I'll definitely put that at 1. But I think Skeleton Crew, there's gonna be a lot to love about Skeleton Crew too. I'm just kind of down on Star Wars at the moment after how they treated the Acolyte, because even though I thought the Acolyte wasn't, had some problems, I still really, really enjoyed it for the most part from start to finish. And I think they really fucked up over there at Star Wars and Lucasfilm and Disney, whoever was in charge of it, letting a very hateful corner of the franchise decide the future of that show, which I think is exactly what they did for a show that was reviewed well by critics, that had really, really good viewership numbers. And I think the only reason they canceled it was because, bitch ass boys were review bombing and complaining about there being women and people of color in it. I think, and I just don't want the same thing to because like the kill out of these kids in the show are already getting hateful messages and stuff like that. I believe one of them has already posted something about it, and I'm just like, I just can't do. I want to just enjoy the show. I can't have another 8 weeks of just listening to people complain about it, and also like have the cast come out with statements about getting death threats and this kind of like. I just want to enjoy the show. Like, please just let people enjoy the show. that's all I want. So, but that's probably why I put it at 2, as as hopeful as and excited as I am for it.
Yeah, if I'm Jude Law at this point, like I'm probably getting ready to call the parents of all these child actors I'm working alongside to just like see if he can support in any way, because the Star Wars fandom in quotations, because like you said, it's one corner that is just the worst, and outside of that there's some really great people. But hopefully the Skeleton Crew doesn't get the same treatment as the Acolyte, because I'm with you, even though there was some things with it where it's like, yeah, that's not great, but it's a first season of television that had so much potential for the future. Yeah. Like just opening up a brand new side of Star Wars with new stories, and it had so much potential. Ryan, how about you? Of the 3, what are you most excited for? Or maybe even does Sonic 3 surpass all of them for you?
As someone who wasn't a fan of the first Sonic movie when it came out, like I rewatched that film and then watched the second one for the first time recently, and I really grew to enjoy like what these movies were. So I'm like unbelievably excited for Sonic 3, also because of Keanu Reeves as Shadow. Like Shadow, the Shadow video game that came out, like that was the one I played a lot of in my childhood. So to see him wield a gun and just going around on a motorcycle kicking ass, it's like, yeah, that's all I need. So I'm very excited to see what they do there. like similar to Adam's point with Creature Commandos, like James Gunn is always good at what he does, especially with comic book stuff. So I'm very excited to see what they do with like what he does with such a strange property, just like how he did with Guardians, and knowing that like these characters will be played in live action, it's like very exciting. Like, okay, this is the connective tissue now. I'm excited to see like something that he knows is set in the DCU, and to see like what kind of Easter eggs they give us, and like what kind of world we're living in. So I'm very excited to see this like new this take on this journey, because it's been a while since we've like got into like really started see the beginning of a franchise. So I'm very excited to kind of be on the ground floor of that. Um, as for What If, I'm sad that that show is ending so soon, because for a show with infinite possibilities, we only get like 24 episodes, maybe. That's crazy. So I know with Secret Wars and everything, like that's probably why they're ending it now. But for for the phase that we're in, the multiverse saga, it's like I wish we got to see more of the multiverse in this style, because like they get to do like such strange stories that you would never consider. Like, and I'm very excited to see, like, from what we saw of the footage, like Storm, Goddess of Thunder, like that's gonna be so good to watch. I'm excited for more Shang-Chi and Kate Bishop content. The mech episode looks wild. So like there's a lot of cool stuff there. And again, I'm sad that it's ending so soon, but I'm sure they will end it on a very high note with the kind of stories they give us, and like a finite conclusion for now. Skeleton Crew, I'm already dreading like the hate that come towards the kids who are completely innocent for all this, because like they're, imagine like with Jake Lloyd playing young Anakin Skywalker back in Phantom Menace. It's like he doesn't deserve any hate at all. Like these are child actors. They are doing a part, and from what I've seen of the trailers and stuff, like they're like genuine kids. They're like actually having fun and playing around. Like this isn't a show where like they're trying to be serious or anything. Like this is kids being kids, and it's nice to have this kind of entry point for kids who are trying to get into Star Wars. So I'm very excited to see like what that looks like, and with the stack list of directors like John Schreier, who's directing Thunderbolts next year. We have the Daniels, who did Everything Everywhere All at Once. Bryce Dallas Howard, all her Star Wars directorial feature episodes are great. So I'm very excited
David
to see what
Lowery, John Watts, like it's actually nuts.
yeah, it's crazy. And so like to have like their style in the show, I'm very excited. I love that Star Wars has become like the Star Wars shows have become like director features in a sense. Like they get to like show off like these directors work and play in a playground that like you wouldn't like have your own movie with. And that's a whole can of worms with Star Wars movies. But yeah, I'm just very excited to see what their directing style will be for this show. So yeah, no, like December is looking very great. It's good to end on like a very high note with this year.
Couldn't agree more. And then we start things off fresh in February with Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, another one I'm very excited for. I don't really have anything to add about Skeleton Crew or Creature Commandos. I've seen them both, and so or at least first 3 episodes for Skeleton Crew, so I'm under embargo for both of those projects. Can't talk about them. But What If? I'm so excited for season 3. I'm with you. I wish it wasn't a conclusion, but on the Phase Hero podcast when they had Brad Winterbaum, we were both in the live chat that day. He did tease that like there's a reason it's ending, and it's not necessarily gone forever. There's a reason that this iteration of What If is coming to a close, and to me that screams incursion, because we know we're gonna have some incursions coming for Secret War. My big prediction that I theorized that when we were talking about the trailer breakdown of this show is that we've already seen Dormammu in the trailer from Doctor Strange. And how did Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness end? It ended with Doctor Strange and Clea going into the dark dimension to stop an incursion. So I think that incursion is coming in What If season 3, and we're gonna get we're going to get Doctor Strange and Clea from the Sacred Timeline in this show. Now, they released the entire set of voice actors, and I didn't see any Charlize Theron, so maybe it's not the case, but I mean, that would be something that I think they'd be trying to keep a secret if they are doing my theory. So that's the theory. We've been red hot with them lately, from Ryan and the Penguin, just absolutely nailing it. Damon and Agatha all along, absolutely nailing it. And then me with Deadpool and Wolverine, absolutely nailing it. So we're red hot. Adam, you got any big predictions that are going to be coming true for these shows to keep the train going?
Oh man, well,
I didn't even have this
wouldn't.
rundown, so I'm just completely throwing you on the spot.
It wouldn't be you asking me about, talk about a throwback. It wouldn't be you asking me about theories or predictions if I didn't just say no. If I wasn't just like, I think anything could happen. I think so. If I wasn't just so diplomatically boring and just like, I think the doors, like just like a politician on PR, or like just like, I think anything could happen.
Coach with a post game speech.
Yeah, just after right after
hard.
a big loss. Yeah, I think anything could happen. I think the door's wide open. We're ripe with potential. I don't know. I do like the Doctor Strange and the Clea stuff. I'm very, both of you hit on it perfectly with What If. I'm just kind of so confused as to why it's ending. I mean, literally part of the show is like a prism of endless possibility, and it's like, okay, well, like Ryan said, we're going to give you 24 episodes, and probably like 10 to 12 of them have just been the same things we've seen in the MCU, just with different characters. Like, hey, let's do this, but it's Iron Man instead of Black Widow, like just like things like that, like where it's like, as creative as they can be, I do feel like at times, as much as I enjoyed the second season and as much as I think they broke out of this somewhat, they have like boxed themselves into this very uncreative prism for like something that should just be like immersive, just endlessly immersive and crazy with like with possibilities and potential. I know they don't want to go too far off because they want to keep things familiar with, those that are watching it. But yeah, I would love to get to see something from What If that ties it directly to things we've seen in like the live action MCU. I know we've seen, and something that also like maybe gives me something in live action to be excited about from What If going for. I just want to see a real big tie-in finally, whether it's like we're getting Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher in a live action project or something like that, like, or just anything to get me, because right now it just feels very much like it's, you have and I know it's, this is, they're doing this kind of by design, but you kind of have the MCU right here and kind of over here operating alongside it. You have What If, and I know there's some congruency, some stories, but, and I want it to like an incursion. I want those two to just crash into each other and just fucking crazy. I want to see MCU characters in these new stories and these new characters and stories and doing all kinds of stuff. I hope we get to finally, I think they stepped it up in season 2. I hope they just now knock it out of the park and are just like, let's just get fucking weird. Let's get weird and crazy and do all kinds of shit that nobody's expecting. Because that's what If, should be. Not just, the same stories we've seen, but just a character swap, like they've done.
At agentsfandom.com right now, you can see a lot of great content, especially from our own Ryan Cortero. As you can see on the front page right now, Moana, Cobra Kai. Lots of great stuff. Red One from Adam, Dragon Ball Daima from Ryan as well, and lots of other great pieces. I've had a little break now that my Agatha and Penguin has ended, but I have Skeleton Crew, Creature Commandos, and more coming soon as well. Ryan, where can the people find you on socials, and what do you got coming out for Collider?
You can find me at, I'm trying to remember. So Twitter, Ryan.
Guy runs too many social accounts.
Yeah. At Twitter, it's Ryan_reflex. On Blue Sky, it's Ryan Cortero. Those are pretty much the only platforms I really use, anyways. So you can just find me there. Here, actually, for Agents of Fandom, I have a interview with the Gutter directors. It's a movie about an underdog bowler starring Shamik Moore, Susan Sarandon, Darcy Carden. I make a really great joke to the directors about turning Shamik Moore from Miles Morales to Miles Morales. They had a great time with that. So That interview is coming up shortly, so you can find that on the Agents Fandom YouTube channel. As for Collider, I'm a bit. It's a weird time for network TV because a lot of them are going on break. So I'm probably gonna try to pick up features for Creature Commandos and Star Wars Skeleton Crew. So you can find that. But I've covered like a lot of different network shows, like I've mentioned earlier. So yeah, you can find those stuff on the Collider site.
I've never watched the 911 show, but I do. If you ever write an article about the scene where Rob Lowe smashes somebody's chest in when they're frozen doing CPR, you
Man,
let
that
me
was a
know
wild
because
one.
I want to read that one for sure.
That was a wild one. Yeah.
David, Adam, where can people find you on socials and any fun big articles you got either coming or already posted?
Yeah, well, I mean, pretty much the only social site that I use for for my work and everything is Adam is on Twitter. You can find, or X, whatever we want to call it. You can find me at @AdamBuns_ over there. And yeah, actually, I mean, every day on Collider, you can find me writing about streaming, box office, casting, superhero, sci-fi, pretty much anything. I usually between 8 to 12 articles a day from me over there. But I do. I think I'm allowed to say this, so maybe I'm, sorry if I'm about to get myself in trouble there, but 3 Star Wars exclusives coming Monday, 2 new figures, and also 1 deleted scene from a little indie show called The Mandalorian that will be the first time showing it to the world. So very, very excited, especially for that last one. But those will be out on, I believe actually the Mandalorian one will be out on Tuesday, but yeah, Monday and Tuesday of next week. Definitely be on the lookout for those.
Speaking of deleted scenes, the one that got talked about from Deadpool and Wolverine, that the one thing Bob Iger shut down, was absolutely hilarious.
Yes,
We could only get one X-Men, and Bob Iger's got to get Mickey something out of his mouth. I thought that was absolutely hilarious, but understandable why Iger nixed it. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. We will be back next week for the Skeleton Crew, for Creature Commandos coming soon. What if after that? Sonic 3, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Then what do we got? We got Invincible. We got Daredevil Born Again. It's just a constant stream of wonderful content coming for the next few months. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any content. Help us build our community. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That'll do it. We will be back next week. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. On behalf of myself, Ryan, Adam, all the Agents of Fandom, we'll see you next time. Peace.